Hello there, Chris here from Becker's Models. Today I've got a Shelf of Doom project that I want to resurrect. This is AMK's 1/48 scale Mig-31, and as you can see it's almost finished painted. You can see I've done something to this wing, and if I flip it over, it's half painted underneath. What happened with this? I started this about 2 years ago and I never finished it. And in today's video I want to show you how I'm going to resurrect it, and I'm going to do something a little bit different, as is my want. So yeah, stick around if you want to see how I'm going to repaint this model. Shelf of Doom kits that you've started and for some reason never got around to finishing, and I'm sure you've all got one or two or 10 or more of them out there. I've got quite a few. I'm not going to tell you how many. It's over a dozen, I'll leave it at that. This one has sat inside one of my display cabinets for over 2 years. I'll see if I can put a photo up of how it's been sitting there for so long, alongside another very big project that's been sitting there for 4 years. I got this kit on a whim. I'd heard so many good reports of how well it got together. Now, I'm the type of modeler where I really prioritize fit and engineering over anything else. Even over subject choice sometimes. Sometimes I'll just build something because, well, it's nice to build. Not because I actually like the subject. The company, Mig, they made a not Mig Ammo, not Mig Jimenez, Mickey and Gorovich, how you pronounce that. They made a couple of demonstrators, and what they did is they took the standard, painted all over grey, and they painted these blue wings and stuff. I'll put some really nice photos up there while I'm talking of, these demonstrator models, I guess you could say. They were trying to flog them off to other former Soviet republics as interceptors, and yeah, I thought, oh, that's pretty funky, that looks alright. And I was halfway through doing it because it's a real simple mask job, mask off some white lines here. There's some white bits down the fuselage, for example. And, just done a really basic grey paint job everywhere else. And I was like, yeah, this is going to take up a large piece of real. There's still a nose cone to go on here and the nozzles, which are all done. I've painted them all. And this is a big model. This is just going to sit in my cabinet. And is that really striking enough and fun enough to warrant that? And because of that, I just sort of lost interest. It's taken me a while, but I've decided, nah, that's it. I'm going to tackle this. I'm going to do something a bit funky. So I've started with a paint mule. Let's have a look at it. This is Tamiya's, BF109 simple kit. I throw a few of these together and I use them as mules because I find that actually testing on real surfaces with real textures and so forth is better than just, say a sheet of styrene, which I still use it for some testing. But yeah, what I've done here is a combination of quite a few things. There's a slight difference between the two wings. You can see that I've done a bit more pre-shading on this side than this, but basically the idea is the same. What I've started with is instead of black basing, I'm brown basing. I'm using a brown color, Tamiya's XF72. Okay, just a very basic neutral brown. Gave it a light coat over the bare plastic, and then what I've done is instead of putting down one shade of grey, I've done 3. Let me just get them. So 50 shades of grey. No, I've gone for 3. So I've got these Tamiya greys, and I ended up only using 2 of them because I found one of them. Which one was it? The medium? Was it the medium sea grey? No, the light grey, the XF66. was so blue. It's actually more like a blue with a little bit of grey in it. So I ended up using these 2, which were a fair way away. One's got more of a green tint, one's got more of a blue tint. And all I did with that is, if you treat each of these little squares on the wing, you've got a panel line behind the slats, you've got some horizontal panel lines there, and you treat each one of those squares as a panel. And just like on the Mig-31 where there's lots of panels, lots of squares like that, I filled in each one with a marble coat. If you understand what a marble coat is, that's where you're just doing little irregular random swirls of paint inside that panel, and then mixed it, went to the next one, and then went to the next one, and I did it along the spine as well, but mainly I concentrated across the wing here to see the variance. So once I've done that, I decided, okay, I now need to, and you don't cover all the brown, that's one of the points. Most of it is there, but you are getting a dark, grungy, grimy sort of feel to those greys, so you don't cover the whole thing. The next thing I did was I wanted to change the tones on those greys, and I added green and blue. So I used a bit of Tamiya flat blue, very, very, very thin, probably about 1 part paint to 9 parts thinner, and some clear green. Now I had to use the clear green because I couldn't get the top off the bloody bottle of of my normal green, and actually worked in my favour. So yeah, I'll just zoom in here. Let's have a look. What I've done is I've used the blue tones on the ailerons and flaps and some other areas, and I've used green across these radiator housings and some other bits just to change it up. And I wanted to experiment with, you know, what's that going to do after the final stage. There's a little bit more to go. I then pre-shaded some of the panel lines, and definitely the only shading I really prefer to do, but I wanted to stretch myself, was I added some shading here in the gap between those moving surfaces and the wing, as you can see along there. And on this side of the wing, I actually did with proper pre-shading, and that was just a very dark brown, not straight black. Didn't want it to make it too stark. And the last thing I did was I added my favorite paint, MRP. I added some light Arctic grey, which is a very light white, very light grey, I should say. And I marbled over some of the panels, so you can see, to make highlights. So you can see I've added bits here and there and some streaks. Okay. Now the whole point of this is this will all then be covered in a light misty coat of Mig-31 traffic grey. This is the actual paint, and that was what I painted the one you just saw before all over. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give it as much variation as possible. I'm trying to make it different. Okay, I'm trying to make, because it's such a huge canvas, I'm trying to make the panels different from one to the other, and you can almost see that effect on the spine here, although I need to cover that a lot more because it's still seeing far too much blue. So the next stage here is I'm going to cover this, and I'm going to see if it works, and if it doesn't work I'll start again and go from there. I'm thinking when I get to the actual aircraft, when I paint the MiG-31, I want to go even further, and I want to modulate the paint so that there's highlights at the top, particularly on the spine and on the top of the wings, and there's more darker areas below, just to really up that contrast and make it a bit more interesting. Let's see if it's going to work. Here we go. I've done half the wing, the other half I've left, but I've done this so far. So that was just using straight MRP, the traffic grey, and yeah, I think it's given a lot more sort of variation and colour to that wing. So I've done a variety of techniques on this. I've done a basic misting coat. This is the great thing about MRP. You can go on very thin, and so I've done very light misting coats over the entire areas. I've then hit certain panels and covered it with a little bit more. I've hit certain areas like these access hatches on the 109 wing. I've actually highlighted them even more, and then just along a bit of post shading along panel lines, I've added some lines there, and also on these flaps. So here's comparing my original paint job, which is just straight traffic grey, the Mig-31 paint. So it's the same paint over a black. This is basic black basing, and when you compare it to this wing, I think this one's got a lot more colour and a lot more things going on. So yeah, so far I'm relatively happy, and I might try with the other side wing. As you can see, it's much dirtier. I might actually add some highlights in there first. I'm going to hit these areas with more Arctic grey. I want some of these panels to really pop, because that's how I want to do the top surface. So the top surface here, for example, I'm going to hit some of these access hatches and panels with a really high contrast. So here's the MiG-109 versus the MiG-31 with very simple paint scheme there, and my paint mule. I'm pretty happy with that. I might add a few extra bits here and there in post, in doing maybe some oil work and some washes. But I reckon that's a good start. It's not 100% realistic. I'm not going for realism. I'm going for a stylistic point of view. So yeah, let's get cracking into actually painting the MiG. So here's the bottom of the MiG painted, and I've painted over with the brown. And Penny, my dog, is saying, "Well done, Chris." And there's the top. I just need to cover over this blue, like I did on the bottom, with the brown paint. So I'll get into that. All right, first thing I'm going to do is do a little bit of pre-shading. I'm going to use some MRP 70, which is an RLM brown violet, kind of like a very dark brown, and I'll just put that on some of the panel lines, mainly at the back here at the top, and then a few more underneath. Okay. Down here towards the back, and I may even do a few of the control surfaces as well. So let me mix that up and get going. MRP is a great paint for doing tight work like pre-shading. It's very thin already out of the bottle. Dial your pressure down and work really nice and close. Just slowly build up the layers and don't try to do it all in one pass. Okay, I've done the pre-shading underneath. I've tried to increase it here at the back. I might do a bit more. That's a little bit too close to the center sort of shading. And yeah, just on the flying surfaces there, give them a bit of a shade and just some random bits here and there. Time to flip her over, and I've started a little bit on the rudders, but I'm not going to do too much here at the top. I'm going to concentrate on the flaps and ailerons and maybe just around the inlets and stuff. So let's get to it. These areas are where pre-shading works best on an aircraft, giving some definition and shadows to those moving surfaces. Okay, the pre-shading is done on the top side with that brown violet, and as you can see I've limited it to the rear here and just a few little random bits, the flying surfaces and a little bit on the inlets. It's now time to add the greys, 50 shades of grey. I've got lots to choose from here. I'll go over them in particular as we get going. So, time to put the first coat down. I think I'll start on the bottom, so let's flip this over and get going. Alright, the first blend I'm going to use is XF12, Japanese Navy Grey. It's got a bit of a light green sort of tint to it, so let's get started on the bottom panels. The technique I'm using here is called marbling, where instead of spraying complete passes over the model, you do light wiggles and twiggles and circles that cover most but not all of the underlying base colour. I swap from panel to panel because I want a lot of variation for the top layers of the paint. With the bottom broadly done with that first colour, it's time to flip her over and start on the top side. This is going to take a while. This is very thin paint, don't worry about it building up. As you can see, we've got the first layer down. It looks very patchy at the moment, doesn't it? Flip it over. There we go. Look at that. Patchy galore. Looks great. Alright, second coat of grey. Let's zoom in there. XF83. Let's fill in all those, well, almost all those other panels. With the freehand marbling, I'm careful here not to cover all the pre-shading and other darker effects. But with the thin paint, you can really control how much you want to show through. I'm keeping the paint well within the panel lines, which are relatively wide on this AMK kit. As you can see, I've skipped ahead a little bit there and I've almost completed the first stage of modelling underneath, and on the top side you can see that I've obviously added some more bluer greys. I ended up using some of the Tamiya light grey, the XF66, which has a definite blue tint to it, because I noticed on the reference photos that's particularly back here and also on the panels here, which I've got to add next, have these, some of the MiGs have, you know, a definite dark blue tint. So anyway, got to keep on filling this in and keep going, so here we go. Alright, I've been slowly building up the layers here, just trying not to lose a contrast, but trying to slowly fill in all the gaps. You can see we're getting some semblance of a grey happening all over, but there's still a fair bit of contrast there, and I'm going to up it even more because next is I'm going to lay down the blue and green. I use very, very thin flat blue and the clear green. This green is very bright and only requires a couple of light passes to build up. I'm mainly keeping it within the shadow of the flaps, but I'm also covering most of the leading edge slats. With the blue, it's also changing the tones on undercarriage panels and to break up the slats as well. So I've done the green and blue shading on the, you can see on the leading edge slats and the flaps and the rudders and so forth. So that should break up the flying surfaces nicely, and also on the on some of the panels underneath there, mainly the landing gear stuff. And what I've also done, just as a little experiment, and I've tried it on the little 109. It may work, it may not. I've added a little yellow highlight along the ridge here. I'm probably doing that a bit too soon. I'll probably do that in post all shading. I really want to make this pop, this whole ridge pop.
Time for adding in the highlights. The light Arctic grey from MRP is very thin. You don't need much to lightly cover those existing greys. You can see I rarely use the full cup on my airbrush because of this.
Okay, so you can see what I've done here is I've added some highlights with the Arctic grey. I've highlighted some of the panel lines and I've very slowly misted over the wing. You can see the difference between that wing and this one, which I haven't touched yet. Now the bottom, however, I've gone a bit ahead. I was just playing around with paint, as I like to do as I'm doing this. I'm using some of this stuff, light grey, 36375, and because I want the bottom of the plane to be darker than the top, obviously, this is a darker grey than the traffic grey, and I've just slowly blended that in to the bottom there. And as you can see, it's starting to really come alive. Most of the marbling has gone. There's some streaking left, and there are some shadows still left, but they'll be covered by the traffic grey, the lighter one. So yeah, I'm getting very close to where I want it. I just want to add a bit here because this is really speaking to me, and this is the part of the painting that I love. This is, as I'm going over this with some very light sprays of the 36375, I mean, this wing is really talking to me. It's, you know, I hope the camera can pick up, but you know, it's got lots of tones, lots of things happening, and that's just paint. There's no washes, no weathering. It's just the application of lots of layers, and you know, it's really doing the business. I'm just going to flip this around to the other wing, and it's got a little bit more to go. I mean, I could almost leave it at that. I'm going to get rid of that green, there's that big green splodge there in the corner. I'll get rid of that. And then when we talk about the underside, I mean, that's really getting some character into it. And like I said, this is just paint. Okay, nothing else. A little bit of that pre-shading still at the back. It's still a bit dirty back here. I can really go to town with oils with that afterwards, but it's got a lot of character just looking at it under the lights here. And yeah, I'm getting really happy with this. It's almost time to flip it over and do the top. Yes, I like it. I think I'm almost done with the bottom. I've given that last light coat of the light grey, and it's got a lot of character, so I'm just going to do one coat of the traffic grey, which is supposed to be the overall coat. I just want to give it a little bit more there, and time to flip it over.
That traffic grey is the official Mig-31 paint and what I used on my first paint job. But here it's only for putting down that final misting coat just to unify everything. However, you got to be really careful not to overdo it. Time to hit the top side, and I'm mindful here that I want a lighter tone overall, particularly on one side of the aircraft where the light source is, so the marbling and modelling effects need to be more intense and lighter. I'm using the 36375 grey a lot more here too, but again, I'm trying to keep the difference between the panels as distinct as possible. I'm also using more light Arctic grey for the highlights within the panels and on any high points I can find, but I'm still wanting to keep that contrast really high with the blues and the grey. I'm loving this technique. You can really control the tones and the textures within the paint job, and you can come up with something with a lot more life and variation. I'm definitely trying this on my F14s next.
I think I'm almost there. I've applied the light Arctic grey, and I've done a few touch-ups with the light grey, the 36375, just to make sure, because some of the panels were starting to lose their contrast, especially on the wings. And now it's time to apply that final layer, the Mig-31 traffic grey. Although it's not going to be the final layer, I am going to add one more, and I'll show you in a minute. Well, I've put the final coat on, and we're minutes away from finishing. Well, until, you know, all the detail bits have to be painted. I'm going to try to put a little bit of a highlight using some navy white. I'm going to dirty it up a little bit with the traffic grey, but I really want to hit, like I was saying before, I want to get this spine to pop out a bit and some of the panels to just come out a little bit more before I do that in post shading. So I'll zoom in here and have a look.
All the reference photos I've seen of the Mig-31 and some really evocative artwork, they all show a definite glint of sunlight off that avionics spine and on one side of the fuselage, so I really want that highlight to come through. I didn't go as far as I liked here. I will definitely be adding to that contrast with oil paints when I get to the weathering stage next.
Well, the greys are done on the MiG, I think. That's top side. Flip her over, nice and dirty on the bottom. Call that a day and start doing the detail painting. So I'm putting a bit of MRP red brown down before I put the dark grey on these edges here.
You're probably thinking, why red brown under dark grey? Well, it gives some really nice contrast. I've tried this before on some Zero aircraft, which have a blue-black engine cowling, and the red on the panel lines and a few rivets, it really gives it a richness. Next is some brown violet as the next layer of dark grey. I'll increase the contrast again here with oils later.
Right, I'm doing the anti-glare panel at the front and I'm going to put a bit of chipping on it. So first I'll lay down a layer of the super silver, then some hairspray, and then put some blackish type paint down. The next stage after I put the metallic down is I need a hairspray effect. I'm going to use the AK Worn effect, so well, I'm just using it because I want to use it up. There's only a little bit left in the bottle, so let's give it a few sprays. Alright, I've let those two coats of hairspray, the Worn effects, dry on over the metallic, so now time to put the actual black down. I'm going to use a rubber black Tamiya XF85, and instead of thinning it with my normal unicorn tears or Mr. Leveling thinner, I always use the acrylic thinner, the X20A, when I'm doing hairspray effects, because I find that these two together, you get a really nice, very controllable, sometimes a little bit too much, so we'll see what happens on the nose cone. Yeah, it's really easy to chip basically compared to using straight lacquer paints with a lacquer thinner. So let's get to it.
I chose the rubber black because, you know, straight black is too stark, and this has got a nice blue tint to it.
Alright, just to break up the black a little bit, I've just added a little bit of dark grey, so I'll just put some highlights on with that. Alright, time to start chipping now. When I normally use like I said, I've got to warn again, when you use the X20A to thin your Tamiya paints for chipping, usually just me spreading some water on with my biggest bristle brush will start the chipping effect. So I'm not going to use too much water to lightly go on. That should activate. Just turn this very lightly. I'm literally just dragging it over the surface there. Yep, there we go. It's already started. I'll zoom in, I'll show you. You see it's already starting to come off. Okay. So I'm just going to use, this is a Tamiya stirring stick. I'm going to use this to do my very fine scratches, and I reckon I should be able to do it. Yep, here they come. Most of the reference photos I've seen has the scratches down near the canopy entrance to the back here. And obviously we'll hit some of the panel lines. And a lot of this, see the ramp just behind the main canopy there? You watch when I drag this, see, look at that coming off really quick and easy. So I can do lots of micro chips in there if I want. And I'm probably going to have to turn the camera off so I can look a bit closer under my loop to get the points that I want. So yeah, as I said, that X20A does a really good job. Here's the nose cone for the MiG. It's been like painted in this basic, simple colour for a couple of years now. Like the missiles and a few other parts that I had pre-painted, ready to go. Not happy with it as it is, so I'm going to get out the old stencil, one of these Art Tool FX stencils. You can see I use it occasionally for modelling and so forth, but I just want to build up the variance in this paint. I'm going to use a little bit of the MRP 75. Well, MRP 65, it's RLM 75, a bit confusing. And then, yeah, I'm going to do a bit of hairspray technique, use a bit of the Worn effects, and I'll hit it with some Tamiya paint, some dark and light greys, and particularly the light one, because a lot of the pictures I've seen, I might find a reference photo or two to put up there. There's a lot of streaking down the side of the nose cone, and there's a great photo. I'll see if I can find that. I'm sure I've got it up there, of a Mig-31 taking off in snow, and all the snow piles on top of the nose, so you can tell, as it all the salt and all the rubbish that's on the runway, that's on the snow and everything kicked up, it stains the heck out of that nose cone. So I hit it first, I think, with the MRP 65, and it was too close to the base color, whatever I painted it with. It might even be this stuff, I don't know. So I decided to get the same color I used to pre-shade some of the panel lines. It's a really nice sort of, the brown violet, the RLM 81, and that gave a sort of a, you can see that gave a sort of a mottled effect all the way around. It's a little bit stark actually. Put some streaking in as well. So to cover that all up for the next stage, I'm going to use some extra dark sea grey just to mist over that, see if I can just lightly cover it and still give it some variance. And then the next stage after that is the chipping. So here we go.
Notice I painted a marker on that paddle pop stick. I need to keep in mind where the top is, because that's where the staining for the nose is going to be, and the streaking has to go down the sides. I'm very lightly building up that grey just to cover some of the starkness I made with the brown violet beforehand.
Time to hit it with some hairspray, and I'll put down some of these streaking effects. Okay, the couple of coats of the worn effects or hairspray has cleared and dried. You can see I've still got those nice streaky modelling effects from before, and it's time to put on this, I don't know what you call it, snow layer, light layer, streaky layer. It's like salt almost. Okay, and yeah, I'm just going to lightly spray that on using XF66 and of course Tamiya X28 thinner, not the lacquer thinner, so the hairspray effect will come off. It'll come off in sheets. It'll be really, really easy. So let's get to it. So as you can see, I've really gone to town with that light grey. It's really mucked that radome up. So I've put most of the stuff on the top there, and we've got lots of streaks down the side, and all that, most of that's going to disappear. Well, we'll see. With the dagger brush. So I'm lightly coating that there. There we go, it's starting to move. Alright, I'll do the sides. So hopefully it sticks on that stick. Yep, and it's coming off. So most of this is going to come off. I just want the hint of it left.
And with that, the main painting or repainting of the MiG is done. I had a lot of fun doing this, more than I expected, and I learnt a lot too, and I'm going to take away that to future paint and weathering projects. F14 anyone? I really hope you enjoyed that and learnt something too. Stick around for part 2 where I'm going to finish this MiG. I'll apply the markings, I'll detail up the painted missiles and nozzles, and then I really want to get stuck into some heavy duty weathering with oils and washes. You know what to do. If you could leave a comment, that'd be great. A like. If you want to subscribe, hit the bell thingy. I don't know how that works, but somehow if you hit that bell, it tells you when I put a video up. I try to do 1 or 2 videos a week. So yeah, stick around and happy modeling. Cheers.